Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Breezy and mild. Clouds will give way to some sunshine and a high near 59. Currently 50 at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. This fracking guy. Dr. Tony Fauci was on CNN trying to explain why he is unwilling to say it's safe for people who have been vaccinated to travel.
You know from the Biden administration that they say it will make its decisions based on science. What's the science behind not saying it's safe for people who have been vaccinated, received 2 doses, to travel?
You know, that's a very good question, John, and the CDC is carefully heading in that direction. You know, when Dr. Walensky made the announcement a day or two ago about the fact that when you have a couple of people, 2 or 3 or more people in a family setting, both of whom are vaccinated, even if it's someone from a friend that doesn't have to be a member of the family, that was the first in a multi-step process that they are going to be rolling out. They're being careful, understandably. They want to get science. They want to get data. And then when you don't have the data and you don't have the actual evidence, then you've got to make a judgment call. And I think that's what you're going to be seeing in the next weeks. You're going to see little by little more and more guidelines getting people to be more and more flexible.
We don't have any science, so we're going to make a judgment call. That's why I'm saying, and the CDC is saying, it's not safe for vaccinated people to travel. It's the recommendation that they shouldn't. If this pandemic is a war, then Tony Fauci is a war criminal. Dr. Marty Makary from Johns Hopkins, writing in the Wall Street Journal on the topic. Some experts selectively appeal to common sense when it comes to using discretion. Anthony Fauci said it was common sense to wear 2 masks at once. I, too, will invoke common sense to answer the big question so many are asking. What am I allowed to do after I've been vaccinated? Once a month has passed after your first shot, go back to normal. That's his one-sentence recommendation. Makary, who is the professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and Bloomberg School of Public Health, chief medical advisor to Sesame Care. We had him on the show last week. He goes on to say, the new guidelines are absurdly restrictive. For example, the CDC didn't withdraw its advice to avoid air travel after vaccination. A year of pre-vaccine experience has demonstrated that airplanes aren't a source of spread. Oh. A study conducted for the Defense Department found that commercial planes have HEPA filtration and airflow that exceed the standards of a hospital operating room. Also, in terms of the science Fauci says we don't have, an unpublished study conducted by the Israeli Health Ministry and Pfizer showed that vaccination reduced transmission by 89 to 94% and almost totally prevented hospitalization and death. Immunity kicks in fully about 4 weeks after the first vaccine dose, and then you're essentially bulletproof. That's thus the 1 month after your first shot, go back to normal. In its guidance, CDC says the risks of infection in vaccinated people cannot be completely eliminated. Makary says, true, we don't have conclusive data that guarantees vaccination reduces risk to 0, and we never will. We're operating in the realm of medical discretion based on the best available data, as practicing physicians have always done. For emphasis, for those who live in this alternate universe where you can reduce the risks in life to 0 all the time if you just close your eyes and wish hard enough. It's unbelievable. This guy, Fauci, unbelievable.
Why didn't Trump fire him? He could have.
I hope there's a reckoning for him in the not too distant future. The way that there is a reckoning going on, at least something resembling a reckoning for Cuomo on the COVID piece of it. for Newsom on the COVID piece of it. Maybe for Whitmer on the COVID piece of it.
And they're saying this morning, if you've been vaccinated, you can go to your nursing home or your retirement home and see your loved ones. And the last line, and you can hug them. Thanks for letting me know we can hug our mom.
Macari writing again. We cannot exaggerate the public health threat as we did with hospital visitation rules and keep crushing the human spirit with overly restrictive policies for vaccinated Americans. Yeah, common sense, totally absent and purposely absent because they're too smart to be that dense. That's the real issue. Something Fauci said, which I mentioned the other day, is what the CDC is doing. You know, we're very meticulous, and over the next several weeks, you'll see the slow relaxation of restrictions to allow people to expand, you know, their the normalcy they can enjoy. Exactly. The conclusions that people who are not completely fear-addled came to, and the way they are living their lives starting months ago, are now being slow-walked out by the CDC so they can pretend like they're still in control. They can pretend like their credibility hasn't been decimated and that people are waiting with bated breath for their latest guidelines. The only people waiting for their latest guidelines are the DC press corps apparatchiks that do their bidding, distribute their propaganda. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by John Feehery, partner at EFB Advocacy. He blogs at the feeherytheory.com, and he has been in Republican Party politics as a comms professional for a number of politicians over the years. He's written a piece at The Hill that picks up where we have left off over the last 40 minutes, talking about lessons learned after 1 year of COVID living. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. As a native Chicagoan, I miss Chicago, so it's great to hear from you guys.
Not the same.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's a lot less to miss, that's for sure. And that dovetails nicely into some of the lessons you suggest we've learned or should have learned over the last year. One being, and this is certainly relevant to Chicago, lockdowns don't work.
Yeah, I mean, we know that. Look at what the differences between California and Florida. Look at the differences between Sweden and the United Kingdom. Lockdowns don't work. Matter of fact, the CDC, which I don't trust any numbers from the CDC, but they have said that we lost 15% more people this year than we did last year. Part of that was because last year 2019 was a down year for deaths. 2020 was a bad year, but the lockdowns killed more people than COVID did. I think that we're going to find that out in 5 to 10 years when Joe Biden's out of the White House and we can kind of start having some rational discussion. But lockdowns do not work. We know that. They make the problem worse. The solution is worse than the problem. And that's exactly what President Trump said early on. I just wish that he would have fired Fauci and Birx and put in Scott Atlas in at the beginning. And I wrote a column in June suggesting that very thing. You know, he never
why
got
didn't
control of the situation.
But why? President Trump could have. He exercises common sense. What was holding him back?
You know, I don't think that he was paying enough attention, and I think that one of the flaws of President Trump, and I love the president, but he didn't understand how to really control the bureaucracy, and that killed him in a variety of different ways. But it really killed him in public health, and he should have put Scott Atlas in there from the beginning, and he didn't.
Or at least, I mean, as I suggested too, at least at a certain point after you had pumped up Tony Fauci and Birx so much through these performative press conferences, one of the things he could have done is surrounded them with more advisors. So it wasn't just going to be those two who were the go-to scientists at every. I mean, the press could still pick them out of the lineup if they wanted. But wait a second, I got people up here, Ioannidis from Stanford and Kuldorf from Harvard and so on and so forth. I got other people up here with the same credentials, the same expertise, and they're saying different things. And that's what happens. You can have professionals and experts come to different conclusions on the same topic, and that's for the civilian political leadership like me and Congress and governors to make decisions when there are competing viewpoints.
The irony is that Fauci was right at the beginning, and he became steadily more wrong. He predicted that it was going to be a less than 1% infection fatality rate. It's way less than that. And he said we shouldn't wear masks. He was right about that. There's so many things that he got right at the beginning, and then he became steadily worse. And I will say that Anthony Fauci is a brilliant at at being on talk shows. He's very,
Yes.
very good.
He
He
loves it.
Sure.
spends all his time doing. If he did more time doing research and less time doing talk shows, he might have been better at his job.
Well, when was the last time he saw a patient? 40 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Exactly right.
so that's an interesting point, though. The idea that Fauci was right in the beginning. So, I mean, would you argue that perhaps in part Fauci is a victim of celebrity culture? He's a victim of the safetyist culture that informs our political culture.
Yeah, I think he's a victim of that, and I also think that part of this is that the whole medical establishment in Western civilization got it wrong. I mean, Boris Johnson got it wrong. The people in Europe got it wrong, and the only country that got it right was Sweden. And look what happened to Sweden. There is a political culture out there, political medical culture that had an agenda. Part of that agenda was to get rid of Trump. And part of that agenda was to strike a blow for climate change. Because if you look at the CDC website before this all things started, it was all about climate change. And as part of it is the Great Reset, that we have to do a Great Reset, and this is driving the bureaucrats in Western civilization. So it wasn't just America that messed up, and America probably did better, especially when it comes to vaccines, than some parts of Europe. But Fauci is part of that establishment. And he got read in, I think, and he became someone who. And the other problem with Fauci is he would say different things on different days depending on his mood.
Yeah,
and
right.
so it's really hard to follow him.
Well, here's the thing, because I want to get to that bigger culture that will persist after Fauci and Biden, and that Fauci is an example of, rather than the beginning and the end of. This press release from the National Safety Council last week. Turns out last year we had the highest year-over-year increase in highway fatalities in almost 100 years. 42,000 people estimated to have died in motor vehicle crashes in 2020, 8% increase over 2019. Fewer cars on the road. I guess more people are being less careful in driving. I don't know. That's what they suggest, but maybe there are other reasons. I don't know. But here's what the National Safety Council says. While the alarming picture painted by the data, the NSC is urging President Joe Biden and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to commit to zero roadway deaths by 2050. Everything zero roadway deaths by 2050. Well, that means eliminate cars and roads, because that's the only way you can get these goals that are set by the political class that are utopian. We're going to create heaven on earth. That is the sort of the premise from which all of these central planners start. That is what is so pernicious in the culture. The idea that you can eliminate risk, metaphysically eliminate risk, whether it's from a virus or on the highways.
It's a really important point, and I'm glad you point that out, because there's this whole cult out there about zero COVID that we can't have. I mean, it's a virus. It's been a virus forever, and it's been around for a long time. And, the other thing is that if you're going to be in a nursing home, my dad was in a nursing home outside of Chicago for a couple of years. It's a one-way ticket, right? I mean, I don't.
No, the average lifespan is 6 to 9 months once you enter a nursing home.
It's a sad reality, but people are going to die, and I think that we cannot all live forever. So it's not how long you live; it's how you live. And the problem is when you shut down society, people die of despair, and we've seen that over the last year. And the government. The other problem I had, the other thing I wrote in my column, is that politicians love power.
Oh yeah,
and they're not going to give it back. And that's one of the biggest issues that we find. You found it with your governor, you found it with your mayor, and they're just not going to give it back unless we take it back.
No, John.
That was by the way, that was a great paraphrasing of Last Samurai. I just have to point that out. Remember the closing scene where Tom Cruise, he was the Last Samurai, is before the Emperor of Japan, and the Emperor of Japan says, "Tell me how Katsumoto died," and Tom Cruise says, "Let me tell you how he lived."
Oh,
it's very theatrical, John. I'm impressed.
Well, John, I was going to ask you to guess how many COVID deaths we had on Tuesday, just in Chicago. Take a guess.
30.
1. We had 1. And on that very day, I was with Governor Pritzker, and I asked, when are you going to raise the flag? What are the metrics, the positivity rate to raise the flag? And we're never going to raise our American flag in Illinois, because he wants COVID until COVID goes away. It's never going to go away. That's like saying you want cancer to go away, which we do, or the flu or a common cold. So, and then he told us, too, that we have to worry about variants. He gave us things to worry about instead of celebrating that we had 1 death in Chicago, 5 in the entire state of Illinois.
That's amazing. I think the other problem you have from a Republican perspective in Washington is that we just passed a huge COVID package, and we're going to bail out Illinois and San Francisco and New York. And it's your tax dollars, and it's because of these stupid decisions made by politicians in blue states primarily.
He is John Feehery, partner at EFB Advocacy. He blogs at thefeeherytheory.com, and he's a longtime comm professional in GOP circles. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. The federal deficit hits an all-time high even before the Biden spending plan. Hertz being sued by a customer charged with murder. Bridgestone paying staff to get vaccines. Those stories next.
The following is a paid announcement. The advertiser was paid a marketing fee for a digital campaign. Please make sure to review our disclaimer on our report page.
The red-hot market for plant-based food is accelerating. And with significant consumer demand, plant-based foods could create a massive multi-billion-dollar market over the next few years. If you've been watching this sector, then you know that major food companies and even fast food retailers are jumping on the bandwagon for health-conscious, plant-based, and meat alternative foods. Get the latest research on this sector free with your free report from Avid Biotech Stocks when you text PLANT to 48542. Plant-based foods and the companies that are behind them could be worth up to an approximately $74.2 billion in the next 7 years. Find out which companies are leading the charge with your free research from Biotech Stock News. Get this red-hot intelligence delivered directly to your mobile device so you can make decisions as market conditions change. When you text the word PLANT to 48542. Text PLANT to 48542. Text the word PLANT to 48542.
The budget deficit for the federal government